Now this bit here, this session start, is the most important thing. So session start has to appear at the very beginning of each PHP page. Calculations can happen without this breaking, but you need to make sure that nothing is outputted. That means no HTML is written and no echoes or prints happen before that session start code happens. So session start, as I've said, loads up the information from our locker into our session ID, and we can then get at that. So you might have saved something earlier on, an earlier page request, and you can now get at it again. Once we've done that, we might want to send the user somewhere else. So quite often what will happen is the user will log in, and if their login's successful, they'll get sent to one page, and if their login's unsuccessful, they'll get sent to a different one. And we can do this by changing a part of the HTML that is sent back that we don't see. So there's a part of the HTML called the header. This is different to those head tags. This is a part that is interpreted. It's read by the browser, but it's never displayed. So part of that header is this location part, and that tells it what file to load up now. So if the information is sent back saying that the header and the location part of the header should be signup.php, instead of carrying on with the code that's there, it's going to instead load up that signup.php. So it's essentially a way of redirecting the user to another page. So session variables are those bits of information that have been taken out of our locker and stored in our session ID. So this $_session part, that's this bit here, that is what holds all of that information, and it has a set of indexes, which are our string keys. So what you quite often want to do is check whether one exists. There are two ways of doing this. We can use isSet, or we can use array key exists. So what you're saying is, does this data, does this item exist in my session? Has it been put in there already? So you can use it as part of an if statement to say, for example, if isSet session login, indexed by login, so you might set the login to true if they've logged in successfully. And then you can check whether it's true and decide maybe whether to allow them to do a job or what menu to display, all sorts of things. Before you can check them, obviously you're going to need to set them. This is exactly the same as dealing with any other array. So before, when we've set things to be an array with numerical indexes, we've done it exactly the same way. So we've got the name of the array, we've got the square brackets, we've got the index, the key, and then we've got the closing square brackets. So whether this is a number or a string, and PHP lets you mix those, although I wouldn't recommend it, whatever that is, it will, in this case, store whatever's on the right hand side in the session array indexed by email. So our slot in the array labelled email will now have whatever was in the post array at the email label. But we don't have to store it, we could just print it out. So maybe you've got a dynamic, a changing menu, and it's at the top it says welcome and then shows your name. So welcome cat. So I've stored my name in the session earlier on, and I can just get it out and print it out. So as part of the menu, it could say welcome and then session indexed by name if I've already put it in there. So this is the logic for the form that you're going to look at in a minute. So we start the page, and we start the session. Always needs to happen first. Then here we're checking, has something been set in the post array? So what this means is, has a form been submitted? Have we pressed submit on a form that has the name or the email in? Our example here is signing up for a mailing list, an email list. So if this name or email have been set, and we're being very lax here because we're allowing the storage to happen if only one of them is set. So if one's been set, then we can assume that it's come from that form. We're going to get the name out of the post, so out of that form, and store it in the session. We're going to get the email out of the post and store it in the session so that we can use them in another page. Then we can redirect to the next page. So we've stored them in our locker for later, and then we're sending them to this sign up page, which will then be able to access that session information. If there's nothing in the post array, so if no form information or the wrong form information have been submitted, then it can display the form instead. So if the form's already been submitted, it will process it. If the form hasn't been submitted, it's going to display it. And that's what this next piece of logic is doing. So we start the session. If the name or the email fields have been set in our form, in our post array, then we take them out and we store them in the session. That's both of these here. Then we redirect to our sign up form. So that will try and sign them up for the mailing list. Probably do sensible things to check whether they've already been signed up and things like that. If it hasn't been set, so if neither of those appear in the post array, then we instead print out the form. So it's just some HTML, simple HTML. So we either process or we display. So what you're going to be doing is having a go at the this task. So you've had on Moodle, there is a session demo file, and it sets up the form for you and stores it in the session. This is good template code to use for other things. You need to do the processing part of this. So you're going to write a PHP page that's going to get that information out of the session and just print it. Then you're going to create a simple login section. And if you manage to get that done, have a go at a guess your number game. So I'll add the flow diagram later, but basically what it's going to do is you, the person, is going to think of a number, and the computer is going to guess what your number is. So you'll think of it, the computer will say, think of a number between 1 and 500. Maybe you've thought of 283. So it will say, I guess 250. Is your number higher or lower? And you'll say higher, because 283 is higher than 250. Then it will make another guess, and you'll tell it as a user, you'll say higher or lower. So you're going to be doing a lot of redirecting to different pages, or back to the page to process again, depending on whether the user says higher or lower. This one is a challenge, but it will make you think about how the redirection and the session stuff works.